more money will not necessarily make you happy. And that's why I want to share with you 5 things I wish I knew in my 20s when I was hustling and grinding constantly in my first business where I owned a gym for 10 years. And what that means to me today, as I have a financially far more successful business that is purely online that I could literally do from anywhere in the world. So I wanted to do something a little bit different on this channel, aside from the traditional podcast where I sit down and share people's expertise and life experiences, and also the traditional Facebook ads, technical videos, and just really open up and just share some of the things that are going through my mind, my head, my heart at this point in my life. So here we go. The first thing is that more money does not make you happy after a certain point, but it will solve all problems not having enough money creates, right? Like I still remember back in my early 20s when I was freaking dead broke. I had just enough to pay my bills. I could barely save money. And and on top of that, I did pinch together, I don't know, $15,000-$20,000 over time. Some of that was borrowed too, to open up a gym that I ran for 10 years that I also grinded and struggled with probably for the first 5 of those 10 years until I really got things clicking. And I can still remember how painful it was to not have enough money to do all the things that all my friends that took the traditional path with taking really good jobs out of university where they were getting 50, 60, 70K or more. From day one, I chose definitely a much harder route for whatever reason. Maybe I enjoyed the suffering, but I remember all the problems I had to deal with by not having enough money to deal with them, right? And that was very painful, emotionally, financially, physically, right? Sometimes with the stress that puts on your body. But I'm very grateful for those challenges and tribulations in my early 20s, so that now I'm at a different stage and point in my life. I'm more mature. I've put myself in a much better position financially, learning from a lot of early mistakes at a smaller scale. But it's still a good reminder that after a certain point financially, once you put yourself in a good enough position, another $100,000 in your pocket every year doesn't necessarily like change your life, and it definitely doesn't make you happier, but it does keep the problems of not having enough money away, right? So that number is going to be different for everyone. I live a very simple life. It's hard for me to spend more than $5,000 to $8,000 max in a month across all day-to-day life expenses for myself and my wife and my dogs and our regular travel that we do, and going out to restaurants all the time, and basically just doing whatever we want, more or less. Like I don't buy stuff. I don't buy clothes. I don't buy gadgets and crap I don't need. I literally just, invest in my health with fitness, yoga classes, jiu-jitsu, gym memberships, good quality food, restaurants for shared experiences. And I find those are the things that actually make me the happiest and healthiest and most fulfilled personally. So yeah, but if you were to 5x what I make right now, which we do really well, I wouldn't feel any different. And I think that's super important because when I was in my 20s, I was so driven to have money because I didn't have it, that it felt like it was going to be like this amazing thing. And it was cool once I passed over that point where I had enough to do anything I want, and then extra. That was cool, but it didn't make me happier. And I think that is something super important. If you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and you're still kind of like in between that grind, just want to share that. But also, more importantly, if you're in your 20s and you're coming up and you are grinding, because there is a period where you will have to grind and hustle and figure things out and work long hours and have long days. Well, it's worth it to get past that point of having more than enough money. But then after a certain point, it doesn't really add to your value or add value to your life. So just keep it in mind. And this goes off to my second point. Buying more stuff doesn't add to your life. I see shiny objects, and once in a blue moon, I will buy stuff, and then I'll not immediately regret it, but I'll learn very quickly it didn't really add. It was really just a distraction, right? Like at my iPad, for example, I bought an iPad because I was in the Apple store, not because I needed an iPad, but I was in the Apple store getting the newest iPhone, which was also a waste of money. I should have just kept the 16 or whatever, 15, whatever it was, the year from 2 years ago, because the newest iPhone was a complete waste of money. I do regret that. But I was like, oh well, what's cool about the latest iPad? I haven't had an iPad in 5 or 6 years because I've never used it. Well, guess what? I do, I do use it some, but I use it to like watch BS TV or series, right? Like things that aren't necessarily adding to my value, definitely not adding to my happiness. And yeah, so the point of this is like maybe you're into cars or watches and it's like a passion, like a hobby, like something you really like enjoy and you do for yourself because it's cool and like you love looking at your wrist and seeing like a cool watch and collecting them and having friends that are in the watches or same thing with cars, right? Like that's cool. But if you're doing it to impress someone else, it's probably not worth it. Uh, you're it's not going to add to your life, in my opinion. The only times I've seen things like material things add to your life is if you use it for the purpose of marketing, right? For like positioning, for getting access to opportunities and people because it's what you have to do, right? So like like I don't own a watch. I don't like watches. I don't really care. But I do know if you walk around with a $50,000-$100,000 Rolex on your wrist, people that also are of that status that have financially put like arrived there where they can buy a Rolex of the same caliber, they typically also understand watches or nice things like that, and is going to get you attention and possibly create business opportunities. So that's probably the only time I would ever buy a watch, let alone a nice and expensive one. And they do hold value, which is cool, right? But I could put that money into real estate or something else that's just more practical and can make me more money in the short term, in the long term, and also be a hard asset. So yeah, the point of this ramble with point number two is that buying more stuff will not add to your life, and you'll learn this quickly once you start doing it. Because I think this is one of those things too that it's like that lesson that your parents try to teach you and tell you, but you have to go through it yourself. I had to go through that myself too. So you're probably gonna be like, oh yeah, that's cool, and either or completely disagree with me on this point, and then go and do it, and then you'll see, right? But just know that that's been my truth. The third thing is creating and finding meaning in your work is super important. My business today, there is meaning to it, but inherently it's not really directly impacting or changing anyone's life. When I owned my gym for 10 years, that was super cool because you would actually, figuratively feel and literally see the changes and impacts that you're making in people's lives. Someone could walk in 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds overweight one day. 6 months later, they've dropped the weight. They clearly have more energy. They've got a better attitude. They walk in with a smile. Like that's super cool. And I miss that so much. But I also know that type of work, obviously there's people that crush in the fitness industry. Don't get me wrong, but that type of work didn't fill the financial cup for me, right? Which is a large part of why I got out of fitness and took the skill sets I developed with paid advertising and pivoted so hard into e-commerce and lead gen and pay-per-call. But I believe that the more I look at, what's the meaning behind the work I do, because I do have to push myself to do that some days. It sounds crazy. Like I'm just basically just opening up about this, but I feel we'll do huge numbers some days, right? Like I hit a personal record a few weeks ago in the amount of profit we did in a single day. And to be honest, like it's fairly short-term life-changing money, but I don't feel better. Like I don't feel like happier because of it. That's just the reality, right? Like sure, I'm setting myself and my family and my kids in the future up for like an awesome life where they also in theory don't have to worry about money as much, right? We solve the problems that not having enough money creates, but it doesn't necessarily make me a happier person. Like I literally just went and did exactly what I was going to do anyway. I cooked eggs the next morning. I had lunch in the house. I went and trained jujitsu, and then I ordered the Colombian equivalent to Uber Eats for like $10. I didn't go out and ball or take a big vacation or buy some thing that I didn't need, right? I just like that's cool, and like I made like the game around it, right? So to keep myself driven, I'm we want to gamify the numbers and like push for bigger numbers. That's cool. But when I do think back to what we're actually doing in the business on two sides, so we generate leads for attorneys mainly, and these leads that we're generating for potential to become potential clients of the attorneys, we are having a positive impact in their lives because we're helping them get compensation for some kind of wrongdoing, whether it's like a product made them sick or gave them cancer. And then, these attorneys help fight on their behalf to get some financial compensation, which is better than nothing, and solving their problems and not of what not having enough money creates. But what actually meant the most to me personally and gave me a reminder of the meaning side of what we do, or at least the meaning I'm creating around it. In the last 3 weeks, one of my team members who's been with me for 7 years, probably since 2018, like 7 years, when we started doing drop shipping, he said, dude, I'm the first landowner in my family. Like, that is super cool. That actually, as I like talk about it, that makes me happier and fills the cup on the fulfillment joy side of the equation way more than hitting some record like 6-figure day, right? Like, it just means so much more. That's way cooler. Obviously, the money's great, and I would never say no to that. But I would rather have more of those experiences that you feel on a regular basis than just constantly hitting bigger and bigger and bigger record numbers with no deep purpose behind it. So, reason why I say this is because now that I've put myself in a really good financial position with great partners and relationships, I'm thinking not just how do we keep growing the bottom line, but what's the game I'm playing here that's actually going to make me feel better about what we're doing? And that's actually, how do I develop a team? So my mind is, how do I invest in the people that work for me and work with me to make them better at what they do, which selfishly makes my life easier, but also I'm empowering them to live a better life, and do cooler things and be more accomplished in a sense, right? And hopefully recreate more stories like that where I have more of my team members saying, oh, dude, because of the opportunity you've created for me and my family, we've been able to do X, Y, Z. Like, one of my other team members, she was able to leave Venezuela and go relocate to Spain because like Venezuela is super effed up with the government and layers upon layers of issues. And I was grateful that I was able to create a work opportunity that then allowed her to get approved to relocate her whole life to Spain, which is great because it's like a better day-to-day, safer quality, better quality life for her too. So, like those things do matter. And I think once you've solved the like hustle grind, pay the bills, stack a little bit of cash on the side, like I think those parts of the business are super important to incorporate. And I think that'll actually drive you more to do what you do day in, day out. Because as business owners, you deal with a lot of BS, especially if you're in the paid advertising space or you do any kind of paid advertising for others, for yourself. Well, I think that it's very easy for it to be empty and to have very little meaning aside from hitting bigger numbers, like lower cost per acquisition, higher revenues, bigger ROI. Like that stuff's cool, but ultimately it's very meaningless. And if you haven't gone down that path for yourself, you should, because it'll really like change your perspective on it. And I think that going to my point number 4, which is off of point number 3, helping others will always fill the cup. And I think the more you're able to incorporate that in segue to you hitting the bigger numbers, I think you're just going to be a happier person, and that you're going to be able to keep doing what you're doing at a bigger and higher level for a longer period of time. Because if it's just about hitting like new records, like that's just not, it's very empty, right? After you meet your basic needs and then have that extra for lifestyle, assuming you don't live an insane, ridiculous, unnecessary lifestyle, then I think that this is really how you create the gasoline for the engine to keep going over time. And that will land you at bigger points, right? Like all my friends that have built more physical, brick and mortar, people focused businesses, they've all become very purpose driven, and it's typically around not just their team, their customers, but directly to their employees. I've got a friend that owns a bunch of physical brick and mortar gyms. This is the way he thinks. I've got another friend that owns like 30, probably 40 or 50 chiropractic clinics around different regions in the US. He has the same kind of thinking, and there's a reason why they've grown the way they have, because that's been their focus. And I think if you're in the online space, it's very easy to neglect this, because we can live and die by what the ads manager spits out for us day to day, right? Which a lot of it's outside of our control. But the more meaning you can create around the things that short and long term supplement and complement what you do day to day, specifically like the people and the purpose behind it, I do believe that will make you happier, that will keep you motivated longer, and you actually reach higher numbers through this. And then the last thing is, after the grind and hustle, you need to value your time. This is something super important. In my 20s, I took every shit job that you can imagine to just make ends meet. I remember when I opened my gym, I was still doing in-home one-on-one sessions with clients I still had, just to keep paying the bills, right? And I'm grateful for those experiences and for that like suffering in some sense. Like, it wasn't literal suffering, but I spent a lot of my time serving others just to like make things happen, where I would look around and my friends were locked into their 9 to 5, making a solid, really good salary for like a 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old. And they had basically no responsibility after 5 p.m. until they came back at 9 a.m. And the weekends they could do whatever they want, right? And I'm so grateful that I went through that hustle and grind, because it really taught me so many lessons about your time, producing value. You get what you earn, right, more or less, and what you ask for and fight for at the same time. But like, there's a lot of things I'll say no to now at this point in my life. I'm 37. I don't need the money a lot of times. Like, I'm not in a point where I could retire and live an insane lifestyle, but I could probably not work for a few years if I wanted to. Super grateful for that. But being able to say, understand the value of your time and be more selective with how you spend it and invest it is super, super, it's amazing, right? And I think that the reason why I'm saying this is the fifth and final point is because I believe anyone that has a business is going to have to go through that period of the hustle and the grind, and more or less, like, a lot of times working and getting paid nothing or less than you should have. We still get effed over a little bit sometimes, right? Clients beat you up. That's normal, right? That will happen. But understand that once you put yourself, like, use that as a springboard to grind, to put yourself in a position where you have absolute freedom, where you can actually make choices with who you do business with, at what price and what terms. Because the sooner you can get to that position, the better your life will be. And the more you'll be coming from every decision at that point of, like, if it's worth your time and not just how much does it pay, right? And I think that's super important to understand. This is one of those things, like I said, that, like some of my other points, where you'll probably have to go through it to really get it. Just know this is probably going to come, and this is a good thing. I think everyone should eat it a little bit, maybe a lot, so depending on the person, to really understand the value of your time, and then the value of what you produce. And if you're not producing the value, you're probably not going to get paid in proportion to it, right? That's also fair. But yeah, I think the sooner you can do this, that your life will get better, and like, you go through this grind, this hustle. This probably should take place in your 20s if you're just starting as an entrepreneur, or like working independent, working online especially. It's very hard. It's much harder than just picking up a job. But yeah, like, that's super important, because as soon as you can get through to the stage where you have enough money and it solves all the problems of not having enough money, then your life just gets better, right? But I think all these 5 points that I share here, they all go hand in hand with this. So I hope that this different style content is received on good ears, and I plan to put out more of this, just life lessons, perspective, selfishly. Like, this is my, not therapy, but my outlet, because being an ads manager all day, like looking at data reports, doesn't make me feel as good as being able to share like honest human perspective like this. So if you enjoyed this video, drop a comment below. Let me know if you'd like to hear more about this, or even if you have any questions about any of these points I touched on.